Repair item macros are a great time-saving feature within the Simsol software. When used correctly, they can greatly reduce the amount of time it takes you to estimate a claim that's got multiple areas with the same type of damages throughout. In simple terms, what it allows you to do is essentially take a snapshot of a list of repairs and save that snapshot of repairs and apply it to any room within your estimate. So let's take a quick look at how these macros work, how to record a macro, and how to implement a macro. So in this estimate that I've got opened up right here, I've only got two rooms in it. In this particular file, we'll be dealing with a water loss where two rooms have been damaged and the damages are very similar in both rooms. So this macro is going to cut out the redundancy of having to add these repair items to both rooms individually. So as you can see, I've got a dining room and a living room set up. Both rooms have their own dimensions. The dining room has already been scoped. You can see over here to the right I've got some highlighted area totals. So you can see I've got repairs in that room thus far. If I click on the living room, you'll see over to the right, that room has not been scoped yet, so I don't have any repairs in it at this point. So to get started, let's go into the dining room and take a look at some of these repairs that we have in there. I'll double click it to bring up the virtual scope sheet. When the virtual scope sheet comes up, I want to go up to the top left and click on List. And the list mode, of course, shows me a list of all the repairs that I have in this room thus far. So with the exception of a couple of the repairs in this room, the living room is actually going to have the same type of damages in it. So instead of entering all these items once again into the living room one by one, I'll create a macro, which, like I said, allows us to take a snapshot of these repairs and apply them to the other room. Now, one option in Simsol is to simply highlight all of these repairs and copy them, and I could copy them from this room to the other room as well. The drawback there is I'm not saving this list of repairs for future use, because as soon as I close Simsol, open it back up, these repairs that have been saved temporarily will no longer be there. So that's the benefit of a macro, is I can save this list of repairs, give it a name, and be able to recall it at any time in the future in any claim. So to record the macro, I'm going to go through this list and select the items I want to be included in the macro. So make logical choices as to what type of repairs you put into a macro. A fire claim may have 7 or 8 repairs that you typically see in every room, and a water loss might have 7 or 8 items that you see in every room typically. So keep in mind, if you put a unique repair item into a macro, there's a good chance you'll spend more time removing it every time you apply the macro. So let's make sure we exclude it from the beginning. So as I look at this list of repairs, I'm going to go down the list and pick the ones that I think should be included in this macro based on what repairs I know will be in every room. So as I go down the list, I see flood loss cleanup, mildewcide floor treatment, mildewcide wall treatment, remove and replace laminate wood flooring, paint and finish gypsum drywall, seal the walls, texture for walls, remove and replace base molding, paint finish base molding, remove and replace cased opening, and paint finish cased opening. So for this macro, I'm going to exclude those last two items regarding the cased opening and select everything else to include in this macro. So to do that, I just hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, click on the flood loss cleanup, come down and click on the paint finish base molding, and that selects those items I want to include in this macro. Now I'm ready to record the actual macro. So I'll come up to the macros menu item, click and select record a macro. And I'm going to call this my water loss laminate flooring macro. Now had this particular loss been a home full of carpet, I might call this one the water loss carpet flooring, or something that reflects the repair items in this particular macro. So once I'm happy with the name, I'll go ahead and hit done. And just like that, my macro has been recorded. So now I can get out of this room by hitting done at the top of the virtual scope sheet. I'm going to now go into the living room, open it up. Once I get to the virtual scope sheet, I want to go back to list mode. And obviously I don't have any repairs in this room yet, because as you can see, the list is blank here. So now I'll go back to the macros menu, and this time I'll select run a macro. This will display the Choose Macro dialog box. Any macros I've saved thus far would be listed in this window here. And at this point I've only got the laminate flooring macro created, so it's the only one available. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it and hit done. Now before these repairs get applied to this new room, Simsol just wants to verify a couple things with you regarding the dimensions of this new room. The first thing it displays is the first item in this actual macro, and that's the flood loss cleanup. The next thing you see, it's showing me the original area totals. And the original area totals show 357 square feet of flood loss cleanup. And just beneath that, I'm given the option to enter new area totals. So in this living room, I can manually enter the amount of square feet for flood loss cleanup. And once I enter that and hit accept up at the top right, what would happen next is the very next item in this macro would ask me to do the same thing. Enter a manual quantity for that particular repair in this new room. Now to bypass that, I can come down here to the bottom and there's a couple checkboxes available to me. The first one, process all macro items using original areas percent affected and item height values. So looking at the original area totals, you can see I had the percent affected was set to 100, meaning that the repair was applied to 100% of the room's dimensions. And then it's also asking about the item height. And looking above, the area height of the original area was set to 8 feet. So if I want these repairs to be applied to the new room using 100% of the affected area, and the item height is still set to 8 feet, I'll check that box here to continue. The next option allows me to change those values a little bit. As I move down, this option asks, automatically accept all macro items using default settings below. So if I check that box, that means for this living room, I could change the percent of area affected to something other than 100% if I only wanted it to be, say, 75, 50, or 25%. I could also enter a manual percentage there as well. Next, I could change the affected wall height. So in this living room, if I only wanted the repairs to affect the walls going up 4 feet, I could change that here to 4 feet instead of the 8 it's already set to as default. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to pick this first option here. Process all macro items using original areas, percentage affected, and item height values. With that checked, I'll go up to the top and hit accept. And just like that, all those repairs are dropped into this living room. And with each repair, I see the unit cost, the RCV, and ACV for this particular room. They've all been adjusted for this room's area dimensions. So you can see how that can save you a great amount of time if you've got an estimate with many areas and the same types of repairs that fall within all those different areas, or a large majority of them. Once you implement repair items using a macro, the repair item from that point on behaves just like any other repair item. If there's something specific I need to change in a repair, I just simply double click on it to bring up the line item override screen, and I can make any adjustments to that repair however I see fit. So that is how you use repair item macros. You can see it's a very powerful time-saving tool that will benefit you greatly out in the field when you're trying to get these estimates done as quickly as possible. It removes a lot of redundancy, and it's a great tool for you to experiment with, and once you get good at it, it'll be one that you'll love using in the future.